Hello and welcome back to the next episode of the Shark Source podcast. I'm joined again by Shaedon, and this is our first episode in a little bit. So we got some topics to cover, and it's been pretty bad for both of our teams right now, the Sharks and Oilers. We're going to talk about the McDavid injury. We're going to talk about everything that's been going on with the Sharks, and maybe just a little bit of where there might be some hope for that team. We'll talk about the big Jason Zucker trade. We'll talk about the Jack Campbell trade with the Leafs. And then we'll also talk about the NHL standings, playoff predictions, Ovechkin getting close to 700 goals. But first, and of course the Cassian kicking play, what our thoughts on that are. But the first thing we are going to talk about is news that broke just today on the 14th of February. The Wild have fired their coach, Bruce Boudreau. A lot of people thought that this could happen just because the Wild, aren't doing fantastic. But then again, they had very low expectations for the team, or most people did, going into the year. And I believe right now they're only 3 points out of a playoff spot. So, that's kind of – but the West is very tight. So it's a tough one. They've got three. Yeah. So hold on, let me just read this off. They have 3 games in hand over Arizona, and they're only 3 points behind them, and only 5 behind Calgary with 2 games in hand. So Minnesota is very much in this. So we'll give our thoughts on that. So Shaedon, I guess start us off. Why do you think they fired him, and was it a good move?
I honestly, you basically stole my points. I don't understand the reasoning. I think if the Wild missed the playoffs, it was pretty obvious that Boudreaux would be fired. But, like you said, they're 3 points behind the Coyotes, who've been really struggling since the new year. And, they have 3 games in hand, They're, 6-3-1 in their last 10, so it's not like it's been awful. I think I read somewhere on Twitter that they've been actually one of the best Western Conference teams since mid-November. So, I don't know the rationale behind this. Maybe it has to do with last night's loss where they blew a lead, but, they're still in the thick of this race, and, I don't see the point of the fire right now. At the end of the season, I would understand, but, when we're this close to the trade deadline, too, and, you're still competitive, 3 points out, and even after trading Zucker, that, they're still getting points in the standings. It's questionable, but I can kind of see where the Wild are coming from. But I think at this time, it just literally makes no sense to me.
You know what? I completely agree. I read on. I don't know how many of you guys follow Talking Hockey, but they're an account. They're very analytics heavy. I agree with some of the stuff they say. Some I disagree with. But one thing they said is that the Wild have actually been a pretty good defensive team. The problem has been a lot of goaltending. And, Dubnik's been out all year, or not all year, but a while. Stalock has had to be their starter. And, they have a pretty high amount of goals allowed, actually, in the Western Conference. I believe they have the second highest in the West, only 1 goal less allowed than the Kings. But according to him, it's mostly because of goaltending. And what I just think is, look, I predicted them to make the playoffs at the beginning of the season. They were sort of a lot of people counted them out. But I think this was a complete mistake because I think they're in a pretty good spot right now. I mean, really, with the amount of games in hand they have, I think they really could make the playoffs. But, they might say, well, we're hoping for better things in the playoffs. We should be, for fighting for a division spot, but I just don't think they have the talent to be there. So I think they're actually playing pretty well, and I completely disagree on the firing. But, and I think when Boudreaux got hired by the Wild, he said this would be his last job. So I'm not sure if he'll stick by that, but that could be it for him. And, he had a long coaching career. So I don't know. We'll see. But I think we both agree that this was not a good move.
Yeah, it's just so questionable. Maybe No, I think best, in my opinion, kind of like Quinville and Stan Bowman. Maybe there's some tension between the coach and GM that we might not know of, but when your team's this close to playoffs, I don't really think you should change up your team. Just like how I'm questioning the Glot move still, where they fired a really good coach, and nothing gets beat the board, but just the timing was really off on both these coaching decisions.
And you know what makes this even more interesting? Minnesota, in their last 10, are 6-3-1. That's pretty good for a team in their position. In fact, only one team in the Western Conference, Colorado, has a better record in their last 10. I mean, that's crazy to think you would fire your coach when you are tied for the second best record in your last 10. I mean, I just don't think it's a good time for them to be firing their head coach. So I don't know. We'll see. It's going to be tough for them to make the playoffs after this, but we'll see. Maybe their new coach does get better, and like you said, maybe it could have to do with disagreement between him and the GM. It is Bill Guerin, the new general manager, and oftentimes general managers, we saw it with Kyle Dubas, they want to fire a coach because they want to get their guy in. So, if the coach was from the previous GM. So we'll see about that. All right, next we're going to talk about the McDavid injury, but we're going to do a little pause right here. So see you in a second. All right, we're back. We just had to fix a quick mic issue. So McDavid is out with a quad injury. This is bad for both of us. Obviously, Shaedon's an Oilers fan, and I have McDavid on fantasy hockey. So this is just this is real bad. It's a quad injury. Shaedon, how long is he out for?
2 to 3 weeks, but the team just put him on IR today, which is, in my opinion, retrospective to the calf injury, but he's out for 2 to 3 weeks, and they said that he was placed on IR retrospective to February 9th, so the earliest he'll be back is the 23rd, which is literally a day before the deadline. So, 2 to 3 weeks.
So this is obviously, I mean, I don't need to say it, but this is a disaster for the Oilers. I mean, even though I think last year, I mean, when McDavid is not playing, they don't really even have a team. This year, I will say they're still a pretty good team without him, but I mean, he really does completely change everything about them. So heading down the stretch, as you said, approaching the deadline, how are the Oilers going to manage without him? Who comes up? And, more importantly, should they still buy at the deadline if they may not make the playoffs now with this injury?
Well, the thing is, so far we played 2 games without him. Chicago, Tampa, of course, we beat Chicago, and we actually played Tampa relatively well. Even though they didn't have guys like Stamkos and Kucherov, they're still a deep team. And, I feel like the last few games we've been playing decent without McDavid, the depth is a concern. And, he should be back with the next 5 games, so I see a lot of Oilers fans really, really worried. For me, I'm not worried because, we still have Leon Draisaitl, who's leading the league in scoring, and now he's shown he can play on his own line, so that's kind of taking a worry off me. For the who comes up, I think around 12 o'clock Mountain Time today, they announced they brought up Marcus Granlund from the minors. Obviously, last night we brought back up Tyler Benson, and with Cassidy getting suspended for who knows how long, you have to rely on those young guys. So these next 5 games are kind of crucial for Edmonton. They're in Florida tomorrow, Carolina, and the next day at home against Boston, Minnesota. Then they're in LA. So it's not the hardest schedule for Edmonton, but it's a crucial one. So to me, if they go 500 to which I think they're capable of. Mike Smith or Mikko Koskinen just needs to play well, and we just need to play good defensive hockey. We should still be buyers at the deadline. Obviously losing Connor hurts. Neil's been out for the entire month. He has an ankle injury. I don't know when he's coming back. So, Edmonton's starting to get injuries and bad luck piling up, but, I'm not too worried. I think Draisaitl, Nugent-Hopkins, and Yamamoto, who've been our best line since they've been constructed near the end of 2019, have done a fantastic job of, keeping us in games, and they've been pretty and they've been pretty good defensively. So we should be buyers, and I don't see a room for concern. I think the Oilers should be fine for 5 more games without McDavid. Now, if this leads into March, then you might have a problem. But right now, I'm not worried.
All right, I'm glad you're not, but if I'm an Oilers fan, I would be, even with Draisaitl's line producing. The reason is it doesn't even have to do with the Oilers too much. It just has to do with how tight that division is. Right now, the Oilers are 3 points out of first place. Vancouver's in first place, believe it or not. That's how weak the division is, though Vancouver's pretty good. But Edmonton is tied with Vegas for second. Edmonton's got 2 games in hand. But they're also tied with Calgary, and Arizona's only 2 points behind them. So, of course, Edmonton has 3 games in hand over them. But the point is, it's a really tight division race, and any loss of points now is going to be crucial. So, Draisaitl and the rest of the Oilers, that line, that whole team's going to really have to step up now. All right, and we will talk about some trade deadline stuff too, actually, a bit later. So we'll get back to Oilers being buyers and whatnot. But I think that's enough for the McDavid thing. Again, obviously, hopefully he will recover fully and soon. All right, next we're gonna move on to the Sharks. So the Sharks are currently, it feels, I don't even like reading the standings at this point, but they're second last in the conference with 52 points. Only 56 games played, so they have 4 games in hand over Arizona, but they're also 12 points behind them. They're 4-6-0 in their last 10, and their last game was a disaster. They lost to the Flames. I almost went to that game, so I'm actually kind of glad I didn't go. They got embarrassed 6-2. Dell, who had normally has been very good recently, allowed 6 goals, and of course Milan Lucic had a goal and an assist. So when Lucic puts up points like that, it's a bad game. So the Sharks actually in about 30 minutes are going to play the Jets. So even though the Sharks aren't in a playoff spot, I still think that it's still worth watching because they have the opportunity to play spoiler. This is a big game for the Jets. Shaedon, I know you don't follow the Sharks as closely as I do, but do you have any thoughts about the Sharks?
Well, Lauren knows that they've been getting him injuries. That literally one game after the All-Star weekend, hurdles out with I believe an ACL and an MCL, and Couture's out, and it's just been a rough season. I still blame it on Martin Jones because he has been brutal, and for what I know, the defense hasn't played as well, and in my opinion, it just all comes back to goaltending. Aaron Dell's been playing really well for the last couple of weeks, as you mentioned, but I think Martin Jones was the guy that brought this team down for the first 3 months of the season. That's just me. We obviously know the Sharks have an elite full offensive core. Their defense is really solid, but it's just inconsistent goaltending, in my opinion, that has brought that team down.
Well, here's what I'll say. As great as Aaron Dell has been, and he has just been elite since January, his season-wide save percentage is still at a .909, which isn't bad. That would be great if you told me he would have that save percentage at the beginning of the year. The problem is he's been having like a 920 recently, so he was really bad at the beginning of the season. But I agree with you. Martin Jones was supposed to be this was supposed to be his bounce back year. We signed him to such a long contract, big money. We might not even be able to re-sign Dell if he doesn't want to stay here. He's a UFA. Uh, Jones is supposed to be the guy, and I mean he's just flopped. And as for our defense, it should be better, but honestly, it just isn't. Vlasic has completely regressed. I mean, I can't think of many players who've regressed more than Vlasic. Carlson has been somewhat disappointing, though I will say since in the first half of the season his defense was atrocious. Recently, he's actually playing quite a bit better on defense, and he's putting up a ton of assists. He's got 40 points, but only 6 goals. So he's playing good. Burns has regressed a lot. It's tough. And Brendan Dillon has actually not had a terrible year. I know plus minus. I don't like using that stat because it's not a great individual stat, but he is a -1 on the Sharks, which is pretty impressive considering how many goals the Sharks allow. But he is a big trade bait at the deadline. I think he's a pending UFA. He's on a very cheap deal this year, only 327. So I think he will probably get traded at the deadline because we just have no chance of making the playoffs this year. But and then also just one more thing on the defense. Radim Shemek has not been as good as he was last year, but one bright spot has been Mario Ferraro. I really like what I've seen from him so far in his rookie season.
Just another thing, I think what hurts even more is that you guys don't even have your first round pick.
Yeah, no, that hurts the most.
Yeah, I just don't understand why. Like, I get what Wilson was probably understanding that you guys would probably still be a cup contender around this time, and I actually had you guys winning the cup, which is embarrassing for me. But I think that just goes to show you how much parity is in this league, and that I think more teams should start lottery protecting these first round picks. Because remember, look at Ottawa gave up for Matt Duchene, and they literally lost. They literally gave up a lottery pick this past draft. So I think GMs need to be a bit more cautious with these lottery picks. And good thing Arizona did that with Paul, because they can fall off the playoffs, and if they do, well, if they win the lottery, they keep it.
Yeah, and here's the thing that this whole bad season wouldn't even be a problem if we had our first round pick. A lot of good teams, like the Bruins in recent memory missed the playoffs. So if we had that pick, we could get a nice prospect, maybe even trade him. I wouldn't want to, but get a nice young guy to add some energy into this lineup. But no, we don't get that. We lose that pick in that trade, and I hate to say it, but Pierre Dorion, who everyone criticized at the time of that trade, and for a while he was considered even worse than Chiarelli. He was considered like one of the worst GMs in hockey, and as it turns out, Pierre Dorion is actually a great GM that he managed to pull that off. He's going to get 2 very high first-round picks, his own and the Sharks. But, I guess the one plus side for the Sharks is normally when your team is bad, it sort of sucks rooting for them to lose because you want them to have a higher draft pick. The Sharks fans don't have to do that because we're not getting the pick anyway. And all right, but that's pretty much enough from them. On the plus side, the Sharks, it's sort of the injuries have been a disaster, but they've really hurt the team. But it has allowed us to see some of our younger players in action. I'm talking about Alexander True, Letunov. We got to see both of them get their first points in the league recently. And then also, I really like the additions we made this year, Stefan Nason. I really do like that we claim them off waivers. So, you just, as a Sharks fan, it's a tough season. You just gotta look at the positives.
And just one more thing, like you said that Sharks fans don't have to cheer for losses because since you're not getting that pick, it's kind of a waste of the season. You're not making the playoffs, but you're not getting picked, so you know where I'm coming from.
Yeah, no, I get
It's a total waste of the season.
It is. You just have to look at the young players and hope they show some promise. And of course, I hope until the deadline, I hope Brendan Dillon has a very good run in these last few games so that we can get as high as possible of a return for him. I'm hoping a second round pick and a prospect. Maybe the Leafs would be a destination. I know they need a defenseman. All right. Anyway, I think that's enough for the Sharks. Let's move on to some relevant teams. So the Sharks are just not have a chance this year. So the Jason Zucker trade. This was big, and Bill Guerin is making moves. He does this trade and then gets rid of Boudreaux. So I'm just gonna pull up the trade, but Jason Zucker sent to the Pittsburgh Penguins. They're all in. They wanna. They're a good team this year, and with Gensel out, they wanna make some moves. So, what are your thoughts on this trade?
I think majority of people are going to agree with me here, where I think Pittsburgh gave up too much.
Yeah.
Zucker's a good top six sport. Don't get me wrong, but the draft class is really deep this year, and Kalen Addis is a good young prospect, and the fact that they also I think more than anything they're desperate to get rid of Galchenyuk. And I get Galchenyuk has been struggling. Like he's been struggling for the past 2, 3, 4 seasons now. But just giving up a first round pick and such a great prospect like that for a guy that's a max of 50-point guy who can get 25 goals is overkill. And I get that they're trying to go all in that Malkin and Crosby have 6, 7 years left in this league. So once again, I get that they want to try to go win as many cups as they want, and Zucker still has term left, but I just don't love from Pittsburgh, to be honest.
Yeah, no. I agree, and here's why. If you look at first of all, let's talk about Galchenyuk. This year has been a complete disaster. He has 17 points in 47 games, only 5 goals. Former third overall pick, but I think everyone can admit he's not worth that. And I mean, you have to hope he finds some home in Minnesota, but this is already, he's been on Montreal, Arizona, Pittsburgh, now Minnesota. This is a fourth team, he's got to figure it out. But I will say that Jason Zucker is not, unbelievable. I mean, he's got 29 points in 46 games. So, that's a pretty good season, but I don't think it's worth what Pittsburgh gave up. Now, their first round pick is protected, which would have been nice if the Sharks had protected theirs. So they can send them their pick next year if they want, but that's only if they miss the playoffs, which they will not do. So, Pittsburgh's making the playoffs. And so I think that pick is huge. And then Kalen Addison, I don't know too much about him. But if you want to talk about him, if you know more about him, but just pulling up his elite prospects page right now, he's a former second round pick, so but I don't know. I think he's a good prospect. He's still young, but that first round pick I just think is too much for Zucker, and to also include Galchenyuk and Addison.
Once again, I get that. The one thing with Zucker is that Pittsburgh really wanted him. Even back in the summer, I believe that they offered Phil Kessel for him, and Kessel didn't want to go to Minnesota, so they're obviously high on Zucker. But once again, I don't think he's that great of a player. I'm Pittsburgh. I would have looked at the guy like Chris Kreider, who's having a great season for Rangers, and I think he's the type of winger that can really excel with a guy like Sidney Crosby.
Yeah. Then again, Zucker maybe playing with Crosby or Malkin will be what he needs to take off. We'll have to find out. And just Addison, I was trying to pull up his points earlier. Here they are now. In the World Junior Championships, he had 9 points in 7 games, and currently he's in the WHL, 43 points in 39 games. So we'll see how it goes, but he's been in the system for a while, and Minnesota's hoping he'll turn out well. So yeah, that's that trade. I think that just my final thoughts on it is I think Minnesota got a high return. But that said, I don't hate it for Pittsburgh because they do have to go for it. I mean, they're trying to win a cup here. So, and without Gensel, they need to get some good players in there. All right, now
one thing.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Just that, I'm wondering what's going to happen in the future when, Crosby and Malkin start to slow down and the Penguins continue to miss the playoffs. Like, they really had no elite or even backup prospects in their system, and they keep trading their first round pick. So if I'm Pittsburgh, I have to be wary of keeping these prospects too, so they can grow within the system. Because if you don't do that in the future, you're kind of screwed.
Yeah, no, you have to, but then again, if they win one cup this year, it'll be worth it. But if they don't, they could end up like the Sharks. Traded a lot of prospects and picks, and look what happened. All right, we're going to talk about the other trade that happened a little more further back. I know it's kind of old news, but we don't do our podcast frequently enough to cover it when it happens. So, Jack Campbell was the main part of the trade. Let me pull up the full trade right now. Jack Campbell and Kyle Clifford to the Leafs. 50% of Kyle Clifford's salary was retained in exchange for Trevor Moore, who's a prospect, a third-round pick that was Columbus's, a conditional third-round pick. The condition is it becomes a second-round pick if Clifford re-signs with Toronto, or if the Leafs make the playoffs and Campbell wins 6 regular season games. I think it's very possible that the second one happens. I think if the Leafs make the playoffs, Campbell will almost certainly win 6 games. So I think it's probably going to be a second and a third and Trevor Moore. So I think that's a little bit of a high price to pay, especially when Campbell didn't have the greatest numbers starting the season with LA. But what are your thoughts on the trade?
Well, for the Leafs, obviously they wanted a backup goalie because Michael Hutchinson for the entire season has been awful. He just cleared waivers today, actually, and just one thing on Kyle Clifford. They probably wanted a gritty guy in the bottom 6, which I can see why it's in the playoffs. And I think he's gonna be a good guy for them. But for Jack Campbell, he's already 2-0-1 with them. He has around a .920 save percentage and 2.5 goals against out. So since coming to Toronto, he's actually been pretty decent for them. We obviously know the Leafs were looking for a backup, especially when Freddie Anderson was injured. And if he wins 6 games, which, like you said, he probably most certainly will, it's not a bad price to give up for him, But on Trevor Moore, Trevor Moore is a decent depth guy. I believe he's 24, 25, maybe 23. And I think that kind of stinks. I'd rather have Trevor Moore on my team than Kyle Clifford. But once again, I get Clifford has that playoff experience and that gritty type of game. But for the Leafs, it's not a major trade. It's more of a hockey trade. The Kings get younger, and the Leafs literally get what they need. So it's not a big trade to dive in on, but it's certainly one. I think it's one that can help out for both teams in the end.
Yeah, Trevor Moore, he is a little older. He's actually almost 25 years old. But that said, he's still developing. He's got 6 points in 30 games this year, which is not a lot, but he's been playing on the third line, so you can't really judge him off that. and he already, if I'm looking at his stats, he already has a goal with the Kings so far. So that's good to see. Uh, anyway, yeah, I mean, I think I think this trade pretty much works for both teams. The Kings have Cal Peterson, a young goalie who was in the minors while Jack Campbell was the backup. So now he's going to get a chance to be the backup. And the Leafs, Hutchinson was not cutting it as a backup for them, so they had to upgrade. And through 3 games, Campbell had with the Leafs, Campbell has a 918 save percentage, which is good. But through 20 with the Kings, he had a 900 save percentage. So we'll see how that trade goes out. But anyway, that's not a huge trade. One more thing about Trevor Moore is he's from Thousand Oaks, California, right near LA. So nice for him. He gets to play in pretty much right near where he grew up. All right, we're gonna move on to our next topic. We're gonna, well, I want to do standings later. Let's do a bit of a trade deadline preview because the trade deadline is coming up, and then we'll do our usual talk about the standings. So NHL trade deadline. Shaedon, I mean, we don't really have too much structured here. Just who are some players and teams that we should look out for to be active on this trade deadline?
Well, no, certainly you have to look at some of these sellers like the Detroit Red Wings. You should probably watch the Chris Kreider situation. New Jersey could have a lot of assets. Palmieri could be a guy teams could be looking for. I think Simmons certainly is a guy. A guy that can play your bottom six. He's physical and he can score. I think teams would want that on their team, especially in the playoffs. Especially if Ottawa and Detroit, they're going to be selling off a lot of veterans on 1-year contracts, maybe like a Trevor Daley for picks. So for the sellers, I think it's just the same old. But I'm interested to see how the West is going to shape out, especially since it's really close. Like even Vancouver doesn't have the division title unlocked yet. So one thing I'm wondering is, what does Vancouver do? Does Calgary go get a defenseman since Giordano's injured? What does Arizona, if Arizona falls out the playoffs? This has been reported that if they do, they might be willing to deal Hall. So there's a lot of factors that can go into the standings in the next 10 days before when it's the trade deadline. So I think the Pacific's gonna be the one to really keep your eye on, and it's gonna be hectic. It could be a quiet day, but it could be a good day like it was last season. So it's gonna be interesting to see for sure. There's a lot of good players still available out there. Not a key name like the Mark Stone we got last year or Matthew Shane or someone like that, but there could be a lot of decent guys that we might not expect to get traded this year. But at the same time, the standings still pretty much bundle up together. We can't make any predictions right now.
Yeah, about these, I'm looking at TSN has a trade bait list, and if I don't know if anyone you guys saw the video, but there was a video. Number 1 on the list is Chris Kreider. Number 12 is Pavel Buchnevich, and Buchnevich actually was commenting as the Rangers were walking to the locker room about it, joking about it to the TSN camera. So I thought that was kind of funny, but yeah, I definitely think Kreider is the number 1 target with 38 points in 53 games so far, and he's a UFA at the end of the year, and his deal is cheap. He's a left winger. I could definitely see some teams in on that, and I also agree with you. The Pacific Division will probably be the most active because of just how tight it is in there. The Leafs, I definitely think, want a defenseman, and I think it's either going to be Alec Martinez from the Kings or Brendan Dillon from the Sharks. And also, people have mentioned Thornton and Marleau. Thornton, I think, has not had a great season, honestly, with the Sharks. But both of them, he's got 2 goals, 22 assists for 22 points. I guess that's okay. But both of them want to be Sharks, that's for sure. But they might be willing, want to get traded too if they want a chance to win a cup. Because I think this is probably their last season. Maybe Marlowe plays one more.
Yeah, just on that, I could. What if we get a situation Joe Thornton goes back to Boston for the year and tries to win a cup
I'd
there?
love to see that. That would be great. Yeah, back with his old team.
Out of any players in the league, I really want to see Joe Thornton, Patrick Marleau win a cup. I think both are around the age of 40. And they've just been in the league for so long. They've been so dominant, especially in the mid 2000s to the early 2010s. Just how good they were. You want them. You want them to go out with a cup in their final year. And sadly, I really wanted to be the Sharks. That's why I wanted the Sharks to win the cup last season because I honestly think Joe Pavelski deserves one too. But if they get traded to a cup contender, I think I'd be all in for that. Like you said, there's some defensemen that are out there that teams could look at. Another one he has is Sammy Batch. He's still 28. He's a UFA, but for a cup contending team, a top four defenseman that's a right hand shot, that could be valuable to them.
Yeah.
So, there's a lot of good names on the board here. Another one's Matt Dumba. Who would he go to if he gets traded, and how much would he get? Because he's still young at 25 years of age.
Just quickly before we move on to these other guys, I want to say, Marleau, I mean, he almost didn't play this year. The Sharks really didn't want him. But he has actually played very well for the Sharks. Yeah, in 52 games. Hello?
Yep.
Okay, sorry, I just heard a weird beep. Okay, never mind. But anyway, he's got 10 goals and 10 assists, which is way more than anyone thought. And his salary is nothing. I mean, he's making close to league minimum. So no matter how cap-strapped you are, pretty much any team can afford to add him. So, and Thornton, I believe, is only getting $2 million. So I really think both of them maybe. The Sharks. It's not like the Sharks are going to get much. Like maybe a sixth or something. But so not much assets for him. It's just about helping them win a cup. But anyway, back to the list. Vatanen. That's going to be an interesting one. All the UFAs I could see going. I don't see Matt Dumba getting traded. And the reason is even though the Zucker trade was somewhat of a sell for the Wild, they're still in on this playoff run. They're still pretty close, and Dumba's got 3 years left on that contract, so I don't really see why they would trade him. One that's interesting is they actually have a pick listed, Carolina's first-round pick, and it's because they also have the Leafs pick. So I think Carolina is definitely going to be a team to watch at the deadline. They're right outside the playoff spot. They're currently 4 points back, but with 2 games in hand, I could definitely see them being active at the deadline.
Especially another thing too in Montreal, Kovalchuk has no one expected Kovalchuk to be this good with the Canadiens.
Yeah.
So if I'm the Canadiens, the most likely, in my opinion, not making the playoffs. So if I'm Mark Bergevin, do I try to sit down Kovalchuk, maybe try to extend him, or I think the obvious thing is trade him. But if Bergevin wants quite a bit for Kovalchuk, I think Montreal should keep him. I think Montreal has a decent shot at making it next season, especially with all the injuries they've been struggling with this season. So I think Kovalchuk isn't a for sure thing to get out either.
Well, here's how I think. I mean, if I'm Kovalchuk, I don't want to get traded because it really did not work out with the Kings. But with the Canadiens, Kovalchuk has just been like a different player. 6 goals, 6 assists for 12 points in only 17 games. But if I'm the Canadiens, I'm trying to trade him. And the reason is as while we know he has talent, he's old. He's 36. And I just think that he's not going to be able to keep up. He's been red hot since he went to Montreal. I think he's definitely better than how he was in LA. But that said, I just don't see it happening to keep it consistent for next year. So, and I think they could get, at this point, probably a third-round pick for him, which is, they got him for nothing. So that's a great win for them if they can. But if maybe they do keep him. And definitely, if you're Kovalchuk, I think he wants to stay because something is working there in Montreal for him. It's really helped revive his career.
Just one more thing. Just two teams that have two players overseas that they could potentially trade is Dallas and Julius Honka and Edmonton Yesa Puljujarvi. So if one of those two teams want to make a move and the deal's quite not there yet, or the other team wants something more valuable, I can see Edmonton throwing Puljujarvi or Dallas throwing a Honka to make sure they get the deal through.
Yeah, maybe. If you're the Oilers, I've said this before. I don't think they should. I don't think they should do anything about Puljujarvi. Don't think they should trade him because his value could not be lower right now. I mean, I don't know how he's doing in overseas, but I'm saying, I think I think eventually he'll come back and play for the Oilers. I just don't think that a hockey player like him or like any hockey player will want to pass up being in the NHL, especially because the Oilers are good now.
Right.
All right. Anyway, unless there's any other trade deadline people you want to talk about, I think that's good for that segment. I guess one more thing I want to say is watch the Panthers. They need to make the playoffs this year. Hoffman is a free agent. At the end of the year, I don't think they'll trade him, but I could see them possibly going for Brendan Dillon from the Sharks. Unless you have anything else, we'll move on from this part.
Nope, not really.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. Let's continue because we're gonna go through the standings. We're gonna do it a little quicker than last time because the Sharks game right now is about to start. I have it recorded, so I'm gonna just be a little behind. So I don't want to miss too much. So we're gonna try and get through in about 10 minutes or so. So in the Eastern Conference, Washington by far leads the Metro with 79. Actually, not too far behind. Pittsburgh only 5 points back with 2 games in hand. Then Islanders, they're with 72 points and 56 games played. In the Atlantic, Boston 58 games played, 82 points. Tampa 1 point behind them, same number of games played. Then Toronto, a whopping. I'm surprised to see it's this much, but they're 13 points back of Tampa. So they pretty much have no chance of getting home ice in round 1. Then we've got Columbus, 71 points. They've really, shocked the hockey world. I know a lot of people thought they would finish in last just because they lost so many good players. Elvis Merzlikins has really helped them out. But now with Seth Jones and I believe who else is their other guy who just got injured? Cam Atkinson, yeah. So that's going to be real tough for them, especially because Philadelphia is tied with them in points and games played. Then we got Carolina, 67 points, 56 games played. Florida is 5 points out of a wild card spot, but only 2 out of a division spot with a game in hand. The Rangers are pretty much out of it. Everyone below Florida is pretty much out of it. Then in the West, we got St. Louis leading the division and conference with 74 points. But interestingly enough, they're 2-5-3 in their last 10. So they've been slumping, but they still lead the conference. Colorado, 2 points behind them, 1 less game played. Then Dallas is 57 games played, 71 points. In the Pacific, this is the most competitive division in hockey right now. Vancouver leads with 69 points, 58 games played. Edmonton 3 back, a game in hand. Vegas 59 games played and 66 points. Then the wild cards, Carolina same number as Vegas games played, and then they're tied in points. And Arizona 60 games played, 64 points. Then right out of the playoffs, we got Winnipeg 2 games in hand over Arizona and 1 point back. Then Nashville 4 games in hand over over Arizona. 4 games in hand over Arizona, and they're only 3 points back with 61. Minnesota 57 games played, 61 points, and then Chicago 58. Pretty much after Chicago might still be in it, might not, but after Chicago it's Anaheim, San Jose, and Los Angeles. No chance of them making the playoffs. So, any thoughts about this? Just the standings in general. Who's any teams who are currently out of it who you'd see making it, and vice versa?
Well, I think for one, I don't know if I'm going to be right because I think this team has always surprised us, but wouldn't be surprised if Columbus, of course, falls to the playoff spot. But Carolina really needs to pick it up here. They made it to the Eastern Conference Final last season, and they had such high expectations coming into this year too. So I've been kind of disappointed in them, but they have 2 games in hand on Columbus and 4 points back. So they win those 2 games. They're basically tied with them. And just one thing, it's not about who makes it, who doesn't, but it it's not really a bold prediction, but I honestly see Tampa game first and then Atlantic again. You know, they've been just on such a tear since December the 1st, and you know, it might not seem like it, but they look like a different team this season. Yeah, they're not gonna get 60 wins again. They're not gonna get 60 wins again, but I just think the whole attitude of the team changed, and I think they look just better this season. And like you said, Florida needs to make the playoffs. Last 2 seasons I think they were 1 and 2 points out, and this season they signed Bobrovsky, who's just been a disaster. And their depth scoring has came up. Their defense has been pretty good, but Bobrovsky was supposed to be the savior of the goaltending, and he's just been a huge letdown.
Yeah, I do think that the Panthers are going to make the playoffs. My team, I agree with you. I think Columbus, the injuries, even though they've surprised everyone, I think that's going to be their downfall. And as for, I think the Panthers are going to make it, but I also think the Leafs will make it. I don't know about Carolina. They've just been very, underperforming. But if they get a big acquisition at the deadline, maybe they edge out Philly. Who knows? So we'll see there. And then in the Western Conference, uh, I still am in on Minnesota. I really do believe in what they're doing, and I think they're going to make the playoffs this year. I guess not what they're doing like overall. I don't really know about their rebuild, but I'm talking about this year. I still think they're a good team. Uh, and Arizona, I don't know what's happened with them, but they are collapsing. And I guess Darcy Kemper, he's after that injury, he's still out. Ranta is, still good, but you know, I with Kemper really was the biggest part of their team. So yeah, I don't know. We'll have to see about Arizona, and I do hope they make the playoffs because it's just been so long for that fan base. But anyway, go ahead.
Sorry. Just another thing. Like you said, if I'm Arizona, out of any team in the West right now, if I'm an Arizona fan, I'd be kind of worried because you're 1 point out of a playoff spot, and that team has 2 games in hand on you. And right behind Winnipeg is Nashville with 4 games in hand on Arizona. So either Nashville somehow wins all their games, or Arizona needs to start winning some in a row. It's gonna be tough, and I don't know out of those 3 teams who makes the playoffs. And of course, Minnesota is still in the race. So we like any team basically in the Pacific can fall out too. Vancouver can fall back at any moment. Edmonton, who has disappointed me throughout every year, I'm still not keen on them yet making the playoffs until I see it. So it's gonna be fun to watch. And there's roughly 25 games left for every team. It's gonna come down to the wire.
Yep, this is going to be a great finish. It's too bad the Sharks will not be a part of it pretty much, but I'm still going to enjoy their games as they look to play spoiler. So I believe we were going to talk about Ovechkin getting close to 700, but I guess I don't really think there's too much to talk about other than NBCSN really wants to be televising the game where he gets it. Last night, they added his game against Colorado, which was not previously supposed to be on the network, but they added it hoping, because they really want to be, have everyone see his 700th goal. He didn't get it, unfortunately. He's still 2 away. I obviously hope he gets there, but I guess we're gonna have to find out because it's we're still no. I mean he'll get to 700, I'm sure, but this season. But the real thing we're all waiting on is the record. Will he beat Gretzky's record for most goals of all time?
I just find it funny how ever since he got goals 698, every game NBC has televised, he hasn't scored.
Yeah.
It's like there's a curse or something.
And I'll bet you the NBC is not televising. Well, no, I know they're not televising his game against Arizona because the Stadium Series will be on. I'm excited for that too, by the way. LA versus Colorado, even though LA is not very good, still always fun to see an outdoor game. But yeah, I'm sure he'll probably get it when they play Arizona and no one's watching because it's 10 Eastern. That's just the luck. But anyway, all right, I think that'll do it for this podcast. I'm going to go turn on the Sharks game. And I know we've sort of been a little, or not we, I should say I have because I'm the one who handles all this. I've been a little late uploading them since the recording, but I am going to get this up tonight. So on the 14th of February, maybe it'll be the 15th if you're on the East Coast. I'm not sure, but it'll be up tonight. So I hope you guys enjoy it. Enjoy the weekend, the Stadium Series, and if you live in the United States, enjoy Hockey Day in America. On Sunday, we got 4 games on national TV, 2 of them on NBC itself. So they should. Though I will say the matchups are kind of weird because it's Detroit, Pittsburgh, Boston, New York, and St. Louis, Nashville. So 3 of the teams aren't even in the playoffs right now. So kind of confusing, but whatever. I hope you enjoy all those games, and we'll see you next time.